Greetings and welcome. My name is Jack, and this is a beginner's guide to the Pathfinder's 2nd edition wizard, where we try to learn a new class by theory crafting a character build from level 1 to level 20. As always, we are going to start with a brief class overview, then I'm going to explain the build concept, then I'm going to lay out the build from level 1 to level 20, and finally, we're going to see some spell snapshots for the character at level 1, at level 6, at level 11, 16, and 20. If you would like to know more about the wizard, you can check out Tarandor's Guide to the Pathfinder 2nd Edition Wizard, the hideously biased guide to the spell blending wizard by Blue Frog, which heavily influenced this build, and RPG Bot's Wizard Handbook, as well as Gortle's spell guide for a comprehensive cover of the arcane spell list. With that being said, let's get right into the video. The Wizard is one of the most iconic Dungeons & Dragons classes, and they are masters of arcane lore and arcane spellcasting. Unlike the Sorcerers, they are prepared spellcasters and derive their powers from study and research. In Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, the Wizard is considered by many to be the best class in the game, because a properly optimized wizard can do literally anything thanks to their spell selection, and they also have access to some unique and particularly powerful options, both in and out of combat, again thanks to their spells, and this becomes more and more true as the wizard levels up and gets access to higher level spells. While this is theoretically true for any spellcaster, the wizard's spell list, as well as their ability to selectively prepare exactly the right tool for the job, and the potential to know every single spell of their list, all combine together to make an extremely powerful class. Although I would argue that the wizard requires a lot of knowledge of the game, and since it presents all these options to a player, a new player might be overwhelmed and might not be aware of what the best options are. And so, in particular at low level, the wizard isn't necessarily overpowered if it's in the hands of a player who maybe spams chromatic orbs and fireballs. So the strengths of the wizard are not necessarily readily apparent, unlike a class, for example, like the Bard in 5th edition, which is very hard to make into an ineffective character. So does the great power of the wizard translate in Pathfinder 2nd edition as well? Well, not really. If you look around on the internet, you can see a lot of complaints that the wizard is actually not a very good class. Some feel that the wizard is actually underpowered, and it is not hard to understand why. If we look at the general class, we see that they have terrible proficiencies, terrible saving throws, so they are the golden standard of spellcasters as far as crappy proficiencies go. They're very squishy, they're terrible with weapons, just like the Sorcerer. The primary spellcasting stat is Intelligence, which is arguably a worse stat to invest into than Charisma. Being smart is very rewarding, of course, in a role-playing game, but the Intelligence skill feats are probably inferior to the Charisma skill feats. Being able to know things is not necessarily as satisfactory as being able to bullshit your way out of a situation, or to negotiate a truce between warring factions, or to threaten scary monsters into doing your bidding. The wizard also does not have the versatility in a way that the sorcerer has, because the wizard is only tied to the arcane school, whereas the sorcerer can pick any other school. So they are a bit of a disadvantage in that. And they are not apparently better than the sorcerer at being an arcane spellcasters. They do not get particular advantages. The sorcerer just has an extra spell slot per level, and while the wizard can technically match the number of spell slots of the sorcerer thanks to their arcane school, being a spontaneous spellcaster, as we saw in our sorcerer video, kind of allows you to cover all of your basics in terms of the spells you want to cast, and you don't have to struggle with the limit of prepared spellcasting, which might result in you having prepared a spell which you don't need, or not having prepared the spell that you need. So it is certainly a class which is more complicated than the Sorcerer to play, especially if you want to play them at an optimal level. And if you do play them at an optimal level, it doesn't seem like you gain that many advantages over a Sorcerer. On the other hand, if you play them suboptimally, it's clear to see how your character would feel ineffective and inferior. I mentioned before arcane schools. Spells in D&D and Pathfinder have a school, which are the different types of spell grouped into broad categories. So you have the Abjuration school, which is the school for spells that are about defending yourself, creating protection, magical shields, magical walls, and so on. Whereas, for example, the Divination school specializing in spells that grant you foresight, that allow you to see the future, or perhaps improve your senses. A wizard can choose to specialize in one of these schools at level 1. This will give them access to a focus spell of varying quality. In general, these focus spells don't seem that impactful. They will also gain an extra cantrip of that school, and for every single spell level, they will gain an extra spell that they can only prepare for that specific school. And this is a bit of a bummer, because there isn't really any single school which offers a good spell at every single level. So sometimes your prepared slot might go to waste and might be inferior to the just extra slot that the sorcerer gets. If you don't like specializing into a school, you can become a universalist, which is a specialist wizard who just devotes themselves to the study of any spell at the same level. This does not give them extra spells, but it does give them an extra use of the drain bonded item action. This is a free action which they can use once per day normally, and allows them to regain an extra spell slot. A universalist wizard can use this for every single spell level, so this is the way they kind of gain the extra spell slot and go to the same power level of the sorcerer. But it's important to notice that compared to a specialist wizard, this means that they will eventually get one less spell, because a specialist wizard gets all these specialist spell slots, and then on top of that gets one use of drain bonded item, which they will use probably for the highest level spell slot. So in a way, a universalist wizard has one less high level spell slot when compared to a specialist. And a specialist technically has one extra spell per day than a sorcerer. The other class feature that the wizard gets is the arcane thesis, which is the field of magical specialization that the wizard pursued at the end of their career. It's a very academic thing, as you would expect from an academic class like the wizard. These theses are kind of like soft subclasses, and their effects are of varying impact. So you have theses like the improved familiar attunement, which provide you with a familiar, and this familiar becomes more and more powerful as you level up. Then you have metamagical experimentation, which gives you a flexible extra metamagical feat, or spell substitution, which plays more into the role of the wizard as a Swiss Army knife of a spellcaster. So this allows you to change your prepared spells almost on the fly. Although you cannot do this in combat, you still need 10 minutes, but you don't need an actual rest. So this really plays into one of the wizard's strengths as the problem solvers of the game. As you might have guessed from my guide recommendations at the beginning of the video, we are going to focus on the spell blending thesis in this video. And what the spell blending thesis does is it allows you to get extra higher level spell slots. You can sacrifice lower level spell slots and use them to generate higher level ones. This is similar to an effect you could accomplish in 5th edition with the sorcerer metamagic. They can convert low level spell slots into sorcery points, and then these sorcery points back into high level spell slots. Of course, in both cases, although in 5th edition it's worse, but in both cases, this is a highly inefficient process. And just like the spell substitution, it feels more of a side grade than an upgrade. Most significantly, the spell blending thesis is a thesis that does nothing at low levels, because you only have first level spells, and so there is no higher level spell slot you can blend them to. The final thing, of course, that the wizard gets, as all other classes, are the feats. And like many spellcasting classes, the feats seem on a lower power level when compared to the feats marshals get. So it seems that the wizard was a bit of a victim of, in general, spellcasting being nerfed when compared to previous editions of D&D and Pathfinder. That is not necessarily a bad thing, because most people would agree that spellcasting is actually overpowered in both these systems. But of course, the wizard being the master of spellcasting, when you nerf spellcasting in general, you nerf the wizard. And then there are in second edition a lot of systems and fail-safes to prevent degeneracy in general, and the wizard, being the degenerate class, again suffers from this. With all these things in mind, is the wizard a bad class? Let's see if we can figure it out. So what I want to do with this character is I want to make a Necromancer. Necromancers are incredibly cool characters. Usually they're evil, but sometimes you can have neutral people animate the dead to serve as the minions. In systems like D&D, there are some spells and some class features which seem to support the Necromancer archetype. A wizard can, for example, specialize in necromancy and eventually get some privileges out of it. However, it's kind of tough to play as a necromancer in D&D, not just because of the social stigma you would expect from it, but because of the way the spells work. You've got your animated dead, which requires corpses. Okay, you can come across them easily as an adventurer, but then you have to manage all these skeletons and zombies, and you might end up with these endless turns where you're managing a lot of tokens on the battlefield. And then you have to manage your time because the spell lasts for a day, but when it expires, the skeletons turn against you, so you have to order them to destroy each other before the spell runs out. And you do have a summon spell, which is the Summon Undead, but that requires your concentration, and for a wizard, that's a very big ask. There are other characters who can try and be Necromancer, Clerics, Warlocks, but it feels like you have to fight a bit against the rules to make the fantasy come to fruition. So I'm curious to see if in Pathfinder we can build a more satisfactory Necromancer. This idea does not sound like an optimized build, so how would we go about it? The spell of choice would be Animate Dead. This is a first level spell, we can cast it right at level 1. It's a spell that heightens at every single spell level, and this gives us a summon. So it is technically a summon spell. We don't need corpses, we don't need anything, we can do this every time we want. We can technically sustain multiple of these spells if we really want to, although since it costs 3 actions and then every turn we need to use a sustain action to command our undead buddy, if we cast multiple copies of this spell, we are going to have our summons not do anything for that turn. In a game which revolves around action economy, having extra bodies on the field and extra actions seems very appealing. These undead have the minion trait, which means that they need our commands to act, but if we use a command action, then the minion gets 2 actions, so that sounds good. What doesn't sound good is that the level of these creatures is very low. In particular, at level 1, we summon level -1 creatures. And then this upgrades, but it scales very slowly, so at level 5 we are summoning level 2 creatures, and the challenge rating of the minions we summon really drops off a cliff very quickly, which means if we are facing enemies of our same level, that our summons are not going to be very good at hitting. They are going to be relatively brittle. And so you can just ask yourself, well, why am I using my highest level spell slot for this? Why am I not casting a powerful control spell or a powerful damage spell? And this is a good argument, and so I think that maybe an optimal wizard would pick these choices instead of being a summoner. Still, the wizard is uniquely suited to being a very good summoner, because these summon spells are of course good only if you cast them using your highest level spell. And a wizard, who's specializing in spell blending, as we saw in the previous section, has access to a lot of high-level spells. They have access to the biggest number of high-level spell slots, because they can use their lower-level spells and turn them into higher-level spell slots. And this means that they're going to be able to cast more of the summons, so invest into their preferred strategy more often. This solves the problem of specialization. If you specialize in necromancy, then your highest level specialist slot will always be dedicated to Animate Dead, and the lower level spell slots, you are just going to spell blend to generate higher level spell slots. So being a specialist feels actually pretty good for a spell blender. So what I'm curious to see is how bad or how good does this kind of character look, and how do we compare to the sorcerer once we've carried out this build. So let's go and have a look. Alright, for our ancestry at level 1, I don't think we need anything too fancy, so we are going to start with a human. We are just a regular dude, perhaps a brilliant student of the arcane, who maybe got a bit too fascinated by the dark arts and delved a bit too greedily into some secrets that were better left forgotten. And for that reason, we were maybe expelled from our academy or community. So I think the expatriate background can be very fitting thematically for the character. And we don't really need anything particular, no particular feats from our backgrounds. We are, of course, wizards. And for our standard abilities, intelligence is, of course, our primary stat, so we want it as high as possible. Then a bit of constitution for staying alive, and a bit of dexterity to fill up our armor class. And that leaves us with one last boost, which we can allocate to wisdom for initiative and will saving throws. So pretty standard start. For skills, since we are highly intelligent, we have a lot of them. I'm going to take acrobatics and athletics as usual. Since crafting is an intelligence skill and it's going to be useful for some of our feats later on, so we're going to heavily invest into it. Although we are not trained in charisma, we might as well take some charisma skills, so we can speak to people sometimes. And I think also stealth, just in case we want to be a bit sneaky sometimes. For our heritage, the versatile heritage of the human allows us to take a level 1 general feat, which allows us to start with incredible initiative, which is important for all characters and in particular for spellcasters. For our ancestry feat, again, human has an amazing option in the form of natural ambition, which allows us to take a level 1 class feat, something that spellcasters usually don't get. And so we can start with a familiar right away. We might take some master abilities, like cantrip connection to gain additional cantrips in the early level. Eventually, we want to give them spellcasting so that it gives us an extra low-level spell slot, which for us might be particularly interesting considering how we are using many of these spell slots to fuel our higher ones through spell blending. Right now, I think we can take Restorative Familiar, so that we can use our Familiar to heal ourselves, and either Burrower or Flyer to help keep it out of trouble. We have to choose an arcane schools. Though I said we are Necromancer, the Conjuration school would give us the Augment Summoning spell, which synergizes with us summoning undead. So it is an option. However, I'm going to stick with the roleplay and choose Necromancy. This also allows me to use the extra spell slots that I get from the specialization to prepare Animate Dead, so there is also a mechanical choice for that. Our Arcane Thesis is eventually going to be spell blending. As I said, this is going to do literally nothing until level 3, so maybe we can start with something else like Metamagical Experimentation for the extra feat, or spell substitution, and then retrain into spell blending, but eventually this is going to be our thesis of choice. For our extra skill training, I think I'm going to round out our social skills by taking Deception as well. So as I said, at level 1 we have the Arcane Bond with a certain item, which allows us to drain bonded item to gain an extra spell slot. We have our spell book. We have a certain number of spells known in this spell, and we can add them if we find scrolls or other spell books throughout our adventures. And every time we level up, we also learn new spells. So this is like the core mechanic of the wizard class. And this is all for level 1. Moving on to level 2, for class feats, there aren't many amazing things since we already have a familiar. We could take Enhanced Familiar, but honestly, we kind of have enough skills as it is for our familiar right now. I don't feel like we need more. I think Reach Spell is kind of useful for us. At these low levels, Magic Weapon is probably a spell we want to have prepared, and this allows us, instead of striding towards a martial character and casting Magic Weapon, to just stay away from danger, use this Metamagic action, and cast the spell with 30 feet range. It also allows us to extend the range of our spells, so it keeps us safer. It's not the best feat in the world, but I think it's pretty useful for a wizard. We got 3 archetype feats. I think it makes sense to pursue a spellcasting archetype, which gives us extra spells. This works particularly nicely for a spell blender, because these spells will be lower levels, and they will kind of compensate these utility slots which we are losing because of our spell blending. And of course, the obvious choice is the Witch dedication. We get a weaker familiar, but since we took familiar at level 1, we should still have the same number of familiar feats. I don't think your DM will take away a familiar ability. And as I said in my Ranger video, this dedication and its interactions with the familiar is a bit unclear, and it's open to interpretation. Since our familiar gets upgraded to a secondary spellbook for us, there is probably the argument to be made that we should get our familiar back every day during our daily preparation should it die, just like a witch. And if that is the case, then our familiar becomes an excellent scout, because even if it dies, we don't lose anything and we just get the familiar back next day. So besides providing our spellcasting benefits, the witch also enhances our familiar pretty nicely. Right now we gain extra cantrips. We want to remain in the arcane school, so we can use our spellcasting proficiency for this dedication. So our witch spells will be just as good as our wizard ones. And for that, our patron will have to be the rune patron. This gives us an extra skill. We already are proficient in Arcana, so we can choose any skill we like. Why not take the last intelligence skill like occultism? But since we are going to raise Arcana up to legendary eventually, occultism is going to be a bit redundant, so you can really take whatever skill you like here. We get our first skill feat, and this is really a flexible slot. You can take whatever skill you want. I'm taking Dubious Knowledge. This is a fun skill feat, which activates whenever we use the Recall Knowledge action. As wizards, I think we might even sometimes use this in combat, and it's certainly something we can use out of combat. And this feat means that even when we fail our Recall Knowledge check, we still learn a bit of true knowledge about the creature, but we also know a bit of untrue knowledge, and we don't know which is which. This is more fun probably for the DM than it is for us, and it might not be the most impactful skill ever, but it's good enough, I think. And we can move on to level 3 for our first skill increase. I think I'm going to start with crafting to showcase a bit of the crafting feats. We might as well take it. We are intelligent, so as a wizard it makes sense that we are able to fabricate things. Since we already have incredible initiative, we could take toughness here, and there is an argument to taking it and then retraining it later on when the feat I'm going to take is going to become relevant. And that feat is Adopted Ancestry, which right now does nothing, but it will provide us some cool options for ancestry feats at level 5. And I might as well pick from the Halfling Ancestry, which has, together with the human, some pretty good feats. At level 4, we have another class feat. I don't see, again, that many amazing feats here. So I think I'm just going to take Enhanced Familiar right now and give more familiar abilities to our pet. We can make them, as I said, into a pretty good scout by giving them stuff like Independent and Burrower, Tremor Sense, and Manual Dexterity. If there is no loose ground where to burrow, you can just exchange it for something like Flyer. So this is kind of like an imp on steroids. We do have access to invisibility right now, so we can make them invisible and we can use them to scout very effectively. For archetype feat, we can get the basic witch spellcasting, which gives us some low-level spells. And for our skill feat, let's start investing into the crafting tree and take magical crafting, which allows us to craft magical items and gives us formulas for 4 common magic items. So we have a nice downtime activity. We might be able to provide our party with some useful items. Why not? Level 5, we get another skill increase. I am going to bring to Legendary Crafting and Arcana. I also think we could invest into Acrobatics for Keep Up, to be able to stand up if we are knocked down. I don't expect this to happen very often, but it's one of the most useful skill feats. If you want to maybe go into medicine and take those feats instead, perhaps because your party doesn't have much healing, you can certainly do that. Take the proficiency in medicine earlier on and maybe invest into it sooner than crafting, because it's certainly more important and more impactful than crafting. I'm just assuming right now that there is another healer in the party. Perhaps there are multiple, but medicine is, as usual, a good pick, even for a character who's not really investing that heavily into wisdom. We get our first ability boost increases, and we're going to stick with Constitution, Wisdom, Intelligence, and Dexterity. And for our Ancestry feat, we can take the excellent Halfling Luck to reroll failed saving throws or even very important skill checks once per day. Very important, especially for a squishy caster like the Wizard. We also get improved proficiency in reflex saving throws. At level 6, another class feat, another choice which isn't really making you jump with joy at how good it is. I'm going to take Spell Penetration because it seems solid and useful. It allows you to reduce the bonuses that some creatures have against spells. I don't know how relevant this is right now at level 6, but I'm sure that later on, as we fight more powerful enemies and these bonuses become basically omnipresent, this is going to pay off. For our archetype feats, we can only take basic witchcraft for a witch feat. And here we have a very cool focus spell, which is Cackle. Now, right now, Necromancy has given us access to Call of the Grave, which is an attack roll spell which makes the target sickened on a hit and sickened 2 and slowed 1 on a critical hit. This only works on living creatures. I don't know how often I would actually use this. It does not seem that exciting. Like, would I rather use this or a cantrip like Electric Arc? And I think that most of the time the choice is going to be the cantrip. So by taking Cackle, we have a way to spend focus points. We actually have 2 focus points we can spend on Cackle. And what Cackle does is that it allows us to sustain a spell with a free action instead of using an actual action. And so what we can do is then we can cast a 3-action spell like Animate Dead. Then on the next turn, we can Cackle, sustain the spell for free, have our 2 actions of summon, and cast maybe Animate Dead again. So we have 2 summons active. And on the next turn, we use 2 sustain actions, and then we have only 1 action available, of course. So this is not necessarily a great option, but maybe we want to use 3 actions for that turn. We want to cast a spell and move away, and we cannot afford to sustain our summon. Well, with Cackle, we can. So this is an emergency 4th action, which can actually turn into 2 summons action, because our sustained spell is going to be the Animate Dead spell, most likely. So it seems like it fits very well with our build. It also fits very well thematically. We are a Necromancer, and so we are expected to cackle maniacally as we order our undead servants to lay waste to our enemies for us. For a level 6 skill feat, I don't really have much here that looks amazing. You can pick your favorite. My pick here is Additional Lore. This allows us to gain a lore skill and be proficient in it. And we also gain a scaling proficiency, which goes up to 15 level in that chosen lore. So this is probably going to be a lore which is relevant to the campaign. I don't know, if you're playing Kingmaker, you might want to take lore Fae. If you're playing Wrath of the Righteous, lore Demons, lore the Abyss, I don't know, something like that. Not knowing the situation, I'm going to take lore Undead. This is a lore which exists in the game. It is a bit broad for a lore, and it seems weird for it to exist because there is something like lore Vampire, which also exists. And why would you be an expert in lore vampires when you can just be an expert in lore undead and know every single other undead, including vampires? Still, it's something that you can do, and it's obviously very thematic for a Necromancer. Level 7, we can get our first master skill increase, and I'm going to pick Acrobatics for that, so that we can take Keep Up at the next level. For our general feat, here I am actually going to take Toughness for the extra HP. Our spellcasting proficiency increases up to Expert, which is good. At level 8, again, not many amazing feats. Here I'm going to take Advanced School Spell. As Necromancers, this gives us Life Siphon, a very nice reaction. We don't have a use for our reaction right now, and this is very powerful. We have now 3 focus points. We can use them on Cackle, we can use them on Call of the Grave, though I don't expect to ever use this, it's pretty bad. Most of the times, probably we are going to use it on Life Siphon. This allows us to regain 1d8 each points per level of spell cast whenever we cast a Necromancy spells. And as Spellblenders and Necromancer Spellblenders, the Necromancy spells are probably going to be our highest level spells. So whenever we expend that, we gain the effects of the summon, but we can also gain extra HP. So it's very nice. For our archetype at level 8, we could keep investing into the Witch's feats. Taking Patron's Breath would be very nice right now to gain the extra spell slots. There is, however, a very thematic subclass, which is uncommon, so your DM might object to that. And that archetype is the Cathartic Mage. This is a mage which is tied to an emotion and gains powers and magical effects tied to that emotional state. This is useful for us because it gives us extra spell slots, which is something we want. We could, of course, obtain that through other means, including a cleric or druid multiclass, and if your DM does not allow you to take an uncommon archetype, you can do that and complement the arcane list with the primal or divine one, depending on which one you prefer. However, for this character, I think it's very thematic to take the Cathartic Mage and choose fear as an emotion. This means that whenever an enemy makes us frightened, we can activate our Catharsis, increasing our frightened value by 1, which looks very bad. However, once we activate our Catharsis, we are under a condition known as Emotional Fervor. This means that we do not take the status penalty of the frightened condition on our spell DCs and spell attacks bonus, but that penalty becomes instead a bonus for our spell attack rolls and a penalty to the saving throws of any foes against our spells. This is, of course, absolutely bonkers, but it has a very important side effect. Our Emotional Fervor only lasts for 3 rounds. After these 3 rounds, we suffer our emotional fallout, and the emotional fallout is devastating. It means that for 2 rounds, we are fleeing. The good news is that we don't need to use this catharsis reaction anytime we are frightened by something. But if we believe that we can end the combat in 3 rounds, 3 rounds is a reasonable amount of turns to end the combat, then we can use this reaction. Of course, if we lose our bet, then we are probably screwed. But it's very fun as a Necromancer to be able to channel the power of fear and use it against our enemies. And our tradition for the Cathartic Mage is going to be, of course, Arcane, so that our spells are cast at their full DC. For the skill feat, finally, as I anticipated, we are going to take Keep Up to be able to stand up as a free action, which does not trigger opportunity attacks. Level 9, we can get our second master skill increase and we can take Crafting. We also have another Ancestry feat. We can take Guiding Luck so that we can use the Halfling Luck to reroll a failed perception check or a failed attack roll. Failing perception checks is probably bad in general, so being able to reroll them is pretty nice. We also get increased proficiency in Fortitude saving throws. Level 10, we get more ability boosts. We're going to boost the same skills as before. Since our intelligence modifier is up to +5, we have an extra skill training. Might as well pick, I don't know, medicine. It's certainly a useful skill to have. For our class feat, this is actually a pretty nice one. It's the Scroll Savant feat. This feat allows us every day during our daily preparations to create 2 temporary scrolls, and these scrolls can contain spells up to 2 levels lower than our highest level spell slot. So this gives us additional low-level spells, effectively, because these scrolls then become non-magical during the time of our next daily preparations. As our proficiency in crafting increases, the number of scrolls we can prepare also increases. So right now we have master proficiency and we can make 3 scrolls, and eventually we're going to be able to make 4 thanks to the legendary crafting proficiency. So this kind of shows up a bit one of the weaknesses of the spell blending thesis, which is to give you less low-level utility slots. For our free archetype, let's get more of these low-level utility spell slots, thanks to the basic cathartic spellcasting. We also have another skill feat, and again, I don't really know what skill training to pursue. I don't know if there are many amazing feats. The skills we are specializing into don't really provide us many amazing options. So, when in doubt, since we are highly intelligent, we have more than intelligence 12, we could just gain more skill trainings. And so we can take any one of these skills, which comes up a lot in our campaign, maybe nature, maybe survival. At level 11, we might as well start to bring our Arcana up to Expert. We also get General Feat, and here we can take Fleet for the extra speed. We get better proficiency in Perception, and we also get Weapon Expertise, which is totally useless for a wizard. At level 12, we get a class feat which doesn't sound incredibly exciting, but it's reasonably solid, and it's Diviner Sense. When using the Detect Magic Exploration activity, we can roll initiative twice if there is at least an opponent who has a magical effect or a magical item in range of our detect magic. This seems something that will trigger reasonably often, and it is advantage on initiative rolls. So this seems reasonably good. Let's get more spell slots with our pre-archetype feat by taking Expert Cathartic Spellcasting. For the skill feat, thanks to the Expert proficiency in Arcana, here I took Magical Shorthand, which makes it easier for us to copy spells of the Arcane School. I didn't think, like, this does not enable us to do that. We were already able to do that. It makes it a bit easier. If you feel like this skill feat is essential for a wizard, you can take it earlier on. I think it's a bit of a quality of life improvement, but not even that big of a quality of life improvement. It really depends on how often you run into spellbooks or scrolls. For example, if your DM doesn't make you run often into spellbooks or scrolls, this might be a completely dead feat, but it seems appropriate for a wizard. Level 13, it's our last master skill increase, and we put it into Arcana. We have an Ancestry feat, and here we have an excellent feat from the Halfling, and that's Incredible Luck. We can use our Halfling Luck once per hour rather than once per day. So this feels a lot better than many of the class feats we've taken thus far. I don't know if this is a praise for the Halfling or a criticism for the Wizard. We get better proficiency in our unarmored defense, pretty nice. And we get weapon specialization, which is, again, totally useless. At level 14, it's time for another class feat. Not many amazing class feats at level 14, so I'm going to take Quicken Casting here. It's not essential because most of the times our spells that require many actions are the summon spells, and we cannot use Quicken Casting on the summon spells because we can only use it on lower level spells. But there are some high actions spells like wall spells that we might be able to cast at this point at lower levels, or we can just cast 2 utility or buffs in a single turn for when we are facing bosses, so it's not a terrible feat. We can also get more spell slots thanks to Expert Witch spellcasting in our free archetype feat. And again, for the skill feats, I do not have much of a choice, so here I took again skill training for more trained skills, and I took Religion because why not? At level 15 we get our first skill increases, and I'm going to bring Arcana up to Legendary because actually the Legendary feat for Arcana is pretty nice. The ability boosts again are going to go in Constitution, Wisdom, Dexterity and Intelligence. And for the general feat you can take whatever you like, you can take Die Hard and whatever, but remember at level 17 you want Canny Acumen for the improved proficiency in a saving throw. In our case, we desperately need higher fortitude saving throws. We also have Master Spellcasting Proficiency. Very nice. At level 16, we can take Effortless Concentration. This gives us a free sustain action we can use every turn. So all of a sudden, having out 2 summons at the same time becomes feasible. And just having out a single summon no longer requires an action from us. So for a summoner build, technically we are necromancers, but practically we act as summoners. And this is an amazing feat, finally, a great class feat for us. Speaking of great feats, we can take Patron's Breath and gain a huge number of spells from our Witch spellcasting. We can also take the legendary Arcana skill feat, and I'm going to take Unified Theory. This allows us to use Arcana in place of lore checks, which usually require other skills like Nature, Occultism, or Religion. So we are very good at recalling knowledge, and we are very good at knowing things, as you would expect from a wizard. At level 17, we get another legendary skill increase, and we can bring crafting up to legendary. We can also pick our last ancestry feat, and here I took Bounce Back from the human ancestry, which allows us once per day to lose the dying condition. Pretty useful to increase your survivability. We also get better proficiency in will saving throws, and whenever we succeed at will save, we get a critical success instead. At level 18, again, sadly, there aren't many great feats for level 18. Re-prepare spells only works on 4th level spell slots or lower, which at this point aren't very relevant. Second chance spell is very circumstantial, and I wouldn't expect us to use many enchantment spells anyway. Infinite Possibilities allows us to pick a high level spell slot and turn it into a mini wish. We can keep it basically free and turn it into any spell. The issue is that that particular spell has to be 2 levels lower than the slot we are dedicating for it. So this is kind of anti-synergistic with our spell blending archetype. We are doing the opposite. We're turning low-level spell slots into high ones and not the other way around. So instead, I'm just going to take Superior Bond. This allows us to use Drain Bonded Item an additional time per day, which is pretty nice. It's a free action. However, we cannot use it on our summon, sadly, but we can only use it to cast the spells, again, 2 levels lower than our highest level spell slot, which is a bit sad for a level 18 feat. Well, it's technically level 14, but still. Level 18 is also where we can get our Master Witch spellcasting for extra spells. We want to take Witch and not Cathartic because this synergizes with Patron's Breath to give us lower level spell slots. Cathartic doesn't have a Cathartic Breath, so we cannot take more spell slots of that type of spellcasting. And we can also get our legendary crafting feat, which is craft anything, which makes us very good at crafting stuff. Crafting doesn't seem an essential part of Pathfinder, so this is why it's the first time I'm investing into crafting. But if you are a wizard, you might as well be good at it, I think. Level 19, it's our final skill increase, and we can increase acrobatics. We get a general feat. As always, at this point, the useful general feats start to run out, so here I took Die Hard to make this harder to kill. We also get our first 10th level spell slot, and our spellcasting proficiency goes up to legendary. And finally, for our level 20, we get our final ability boosts, bringing Constitution up to 20, Dexterity up to 20, Intelligence up to 22. Wisdom is already up to 18, so there's no point in increasing it further. We can get a bit of Charisma, or we can get a little bit of Strength. Pick your favorite. We also get an extra skill because our intelligence modifier has gone up to +6. Might as well take performance as usual at level 20 to celebrate our final level. For the class feat, it would be very tempting to take spell mastery to gain 4 extra spell slots. However, I am going to keep committing to the high level spell slot strategy and take Archwizard's Might for the second 10th level spell slot. So I'm choosing 1 spell slot instead of 4, which is a tough choice, especially because these are spell slots that go up to 9th level. But since we are a Necromancer, I want to be able to summon our ultimate undead minion more often. Actually, using 10th level spells for summons, as we are going to see, feels pretty bad. So, having 1 backup 10th level spell slot that you can use for the powerful skeleton instead of a wish maybe means that sometimes we are actually going to summon the powerful skeleton instead of casting wish. Our last archetype class feat is going to be Master Cathartic Spellcasting for the extra spells. And our final skill feat, we could take Legendary Professionals since we are legendary in lore, or we could just take another skill training. Might as well take Legendary Professional, but here it's not a great feat, but you can really pick whatever you want. So now that we have arrived at level 20, many of the feat choices that we made and many points in our build felt a bit underwhelming, especially when compared with many of the other builds we've made, and especially when compared with the marshals. So by looking at the class framework of the wizard and by looking at this leveling progression, it's very easy to understand why people would think that the wizard is underpowered or it's not just a very good class. However, the most important thing to keep in mind at this point is that we are just looking at a fraction of what the wizard truly is, because the wizard has sacrificed all these things to be a spellcaster, and hopefully the best spellcaster in the game, but even if that's not the case, a very powerful and competent spellcaster. So before expressing our final judgment, let's move on to the spell snapshot and see if that is indeed the redeeming quality of the wizard, or if the wizard is just not a very good class. So at this point, we should have the spell snapshot, but since I go a bit into details on the different summons we could get, at the end of the day, the video would have been like 2.5 hours long, and I felt it was too long, so I decided instead to split the video in 2. That part is going to come out next week. However, I don't want to leave you hanging with what I think about the wizard, so if you don't care about watching the second part of the video, I'm going to tell you right now the conclusions I get to. And my conclusions is that the wizard is not a bad class. In particular, spell blending wizards have this interesting ability to spam all these high-level spells, and they almost feel like a sorcerer. So in a way, I argue that the wizard and the sorcerer kind of exchange place in Pathfinder 2nd edition. This means, though, that I do believe that the sorcerer is a better class, or at least I would prefer playing a sorcerer than a wizard. If you are interested in knowing more into detail my reasoning for that, you can check out the next video, so the second part of the wizard build. Regardless, I thank you all very much for listening, and I'll see you all in the next one.